If you're building your ABA company and you're tired of guessing, this is for you. We built the EBCBA blueprint to give you real structure, systems, and support without the fluff. Details are in the description.
All right, so we've got Gabrielle on today. Gabrielle is the founder and CEO of ProTask Solutions. She's also written a book, You Only Know What You Know. So I would check that out. And she focuses on delegation, workflow design, and operational leadership to help ABA leaders grow with confidence. Tell us more about ProTask Solutions.
Wonderful. Well, first, thanks for having me on today. I greatly appreciate the opportunity. And I'd love to tell you guys a little bit more about what I do, who I am, and why I'm here today. Yes, I do run a company called ProTask Solutions. My background is specifically in helping healthcare-related organizations scale without burning out their leaders and their teams. Very important there. While ABA isn't like my clinical specialty, I don't have my background education in that specific track. I have been working with multi-million-dollar practices and consultancies around just some universal truths. And that is when their systems are weak, their growth creates chaos, and instead of the stability that we'd like to see in order to scale those practices. So today we're going to talk about how to grow profitably with integrity in a way that protects your mission, your people, and your own well-being. I know it's a lot, and I know we only have a little bit of time, but I promise this is going to be extremely high-value content for you guys today. All right, so let's get started. I do like to lead with a quote because I do feel it's very important for everybody that's viewing. Structure sometimes is often it seems as a luxury. It seems like something like, well, if I had the extra time, the extra hours in the day, of course I would do it, but I just don't. Whatever you don't invest in on the front of creating your business, you're going to pay for on the back end. So what we like to do is make sure that our clients that we work with, that they're really putting in the time and effort as soon as we're involved, as soon as they can. That way they're working towards more sustainable systems from the start. All right. So why does this matter? With ABA, with really any kind of clinical consulting that you're doing, growth often looks like just do more, right? Stay up later, work through your weekends. Who needs the evening hours? You can make it happen, right? But when you have more staff and more clients and even more hours involved, things can start to snowball very quickly. And any kind of plan that you had to tackle that and do more is quickly going to go off the rails. So doing more without structure is kind of like building a house on sand. You might get lucky and it might stand for a while, but eventually it's going to sink. Sustainable scaling is more about putting in foundations that hold, whether you're a team of 3 or 300, and growth should strengthen your mission, not drain it. Very, very important here because we don't want it to seem like a nuisance. We don't want it to seem like it's a drain on your time, on your energy. We really have to reframe how we approach it and for the benefit of yourself, your organization, and the inevitable team that you will scale to hold one day. All right. So before we get started on the processes, I want to talk a little bit more about the cost of inaction. So when practices don't address these issues, and the more that you avoid them, the consequences are going to show up rapidly, as we said before. Your leadership is going to burn out and become the bottleneck because they need to feel like they have some semblance of control on all parts, especially if they can't articulate how other people should contribute or be involved in those processes as well. Staff turnovers are going to stay high. You're going to see that revolving door, just client in, client out, contractor in, contractor out. It becomes very, very hard, especially for those people that are your boots on the ground, whether it's your RBTs, whether it's your admin staff, whether it's just really anybody that you have involved with your business. You could hire a social media manager, but if you don't give them processes from the start, you're just going to be continuing to refill those seats as they become available, which is going to happen so often. Also, it puts your revenue at extreme risk, right? Revenue is going to leak out through billing errors, through compliance penalties. It's something that nobody wants to acknowledge, but it happens every day. And some founders simply decide that it's easier to go back to corporate work. I get it. I've been there myself. There's times where there's seasons in business where you think I should probably just go get a 9 to 5, could work remote. I could contract for this company, and that's okay. There's seasons of life where people are going to have to do that. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that when your survival is the priority, if keeping this business, keeping it mission aligned and keeping it sustainable is your goal, and you're in it for the long run, then the systems are really the only way to go to make that growth sustainable. So we're going to talk about how we do that through these 3 pillars of scaling with integrity. So after working with many, many organizations, I've identified 3 pillars that support sustainable growth. And that's going to be your people, your processes, and your protection of integrity. Okay. If one of these is weak, then scaling will eventually collapse. It's inevitable. But when they work together, they truly do anchor your practice through any season of growth, whether, like I said, you've got your team of 3 that you're building up or your team of 300. So let's talk a little bit more about this pillar 1 over here. And pillar 1 is your people. So your people are always your foundation. In ABA and in other specialties, your turnover is your constant threat. But turnover is not always just about pay. It's not always just about opportunity. It comes down to clarity. When roles are defined and staff knows what their success looks like, and burnout is addressed early as well, your retention is going to improve. Systems don't just protect the business, but they protect your people as well. Most people don't go into this type of business because they want to make a quick buck. They want to make a change. They want to have a mission-driven impact on the work that they're doing. And finding people that align with that mission, that come to join your team and help it grow, is always going to be important, even if you don't directly express it. So finding people that we align with and ensuring that we show up for those people once we have them, that we give them those resources and we're very clear on what we expect from them, is so integral to keeping those people with you for the long haul. All right, our next pillar is pillar 2, and these are going to be our processes. So processes do create freedom, and without them, every problem ends up right back on leadership's desk. With them, the practice runs smoothly, even if you're not in the room, though. So with ABA, processes protect revenue and compliance and helps make sure that our documentation is always accurate, billing's always timely, and our workflows are much more simple rather than exhausting. And like I said back in the beginning, anything that you don't do initially when you're building your business from the start, you pay for on the back end. So what we like to do is lead with that constant reminder that anything you can do in your day-to-day to capture a process is saving you money, but also saving you a lot of time later on. So there's thousands of extensions that do exist for like your Chrome browser, if you're a Chrome user, other tools or subscriptions you could download as well, where you just keep them running on your computer as you work, and they're going to help you document some processes. I know that we come into HIPAA compliance, we come into a whole bunch of things that we need to keep in mind, as well as not sharing too much information with these systems. But to get started, simple tools, simple free subscriptions are a great way to get a handle on establishing just some foundational processes for your business. And then pillar 3, we're going to have protection, and that's protection of clinical integrity for the scope of this presentation. Growth means absolutely nothing if it compromises the quality of care that you deliver. And that's why protection is our 3rd pillar for today. Scaling with integrity is about expanding your reach while keeping supervision, documentation, and ethics airtight. This is what ensures that your growth builds trust, not only with your clients, with your staff, with your payers, but with really anybody that has visibility into the work that you're doing. So this is very important for us, very important for the impact that you want to make on the community. And if you're in the business of making this your mission in life and making sure that you can build a network and a community of advocates and allies, I would say that this is even more important as a pillar as we move forward down this framework. All right, so shifting gears just a little bit. I did talk about those challenges that leadership has to see from the very start of trying to move forward with creating their own business, their own entity. One of those things that we see most often is the leadership identity shift, right? So you may have come into this space because you worked as RBT, maybe you saw a job description and you thought, wow, I could do that. Maybe you have a family member that benefits from services. And so one thing that most entrepreneurs do struggle with in early stages is that identity shift into being the big boss and being the one, the founding face of their organization, being the one who's the leader. And so whether you realize it or not, you're also stepping into these multiple roles at the same time, likely while you're still delivering a certain quality of care, seeing patients, meeting with other third parties to try and grow the company. And so it is a lot of hats to wear all at once. But I just wanted to let you know it's common. And one approach that we have in particular is that we acknowledge that there's going to be many growing pains that you see along the way because you're having to step out of your comfort zone into a role that you might not be familiar with. But there's truly no wrong or right way of doing that. You just have to find, this dose of what's comfortable for you to start to absorb and start to practice on a day-to-day basis. And we help all of our clients do that as well. We support them through not only building these systems and these deliverables, but help the leaders step into their new identities. So just quick note about that any mission-driven company that you have is going to attract more people and more visibility. We make sure that you can show up to not only be delivering upon the service that you promised, but truly be the expert in your field and feel confident in your. All right. So how do we tie these three pillars together? Well, when you do, you get a very foundational level of strength and stability. These pillars are going to anchor your practice, whether you're small or you're scaling into multi-million-dollar growth. And they're going to carry you through the staff changes that you see, the market shifts, crises, really anything. As long as you ensure that you're putting your time, your effort, your energy into fortifying these three pillars, that's what scaling with integrity looks like in practice. And over time, that's what sustainable, successful businesses all have in common. All right. And so the framework that we typically use with clients in this space is 5 simple steps that move you from chaos to clarity. It's not theoretical. It's just a repeatable process that we've really boiled down to these 5 points that works whether you're just starting out or you're already getting established. And we wanted to share those with you guys today. So first, we're going to start here with audit and diagnose. I know if you're a smaller organization, you might think, well, I show up and I do my job and then I go home for the day. Okay, that's fine. That's fair. But there's always opportunity to take inventory of the things that you do see yourself repeating day after day. Even if it's something as silly as first I get a snack and then I make sure I have my bottle of water and then I get out the door. For now, that's your process that you're taking care of your whole person before you get out the door and you start your work for the day. And if that's all we can do to start off, then that's all we can do. But getting people in repeatable patterns of identifying anywhere where a process exists, auditing and diagnosing it, it's very, very, very important to us because this is the opportunity for us to identify any initial bottlenecks that may exist and also to start naming where we can delegate off later on as the team's going to grow. The next step is organize and strategize. We have to bring order to workflows, to operations. And we do this by defining them, by documenting with SOPs, and by matching skills to responsibilities. We have to stay in our lane. We have to identify scope of work. And in the beginning stages, it's a very, very hard thing to do. You might be a one-man show. You might be a one-man show and maybe have some part-time help, but really working to identify on a day-to-day basis what you can prioritize and what could be handed off to other people is going to make all the difference as you start to see that expansion of your team, of your services, and that growth that we're all working towards. That's where your true clarity is going to begin. For step 3, we're going to have to make adjustments, right? Retraining and reassigning people so that they're in the right seats is definitely something that's on our radar at this point. Sometimes the new hires are needed, but often it's more about realigning into a role and not replacing. And that's so important because I know a lot of people feel overburdened with the fact that I'm so small right now. I cannot afford to hire a full-time this, a full-time that. What would my own compensation look like if I really did bring on somebody at that capacity? Stop. It's often not that serious. It's often about let's untangle all of the things that you're seeing that are pain points that are overwhelming you. And let's start to take those processes that we developed and retraining some people on task execution that's a very clear A through Z, where we feel that they are confident in completing it. And also they feel confident in owning it. And that's our step 3, very critical at this point. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer to make it through step 3, but we're always revisiting it. It's very important to the progression of these systems and steps. All right. So for step 4, we're going to put the right tools in the right place. For us, previously in working with clients at this rate in this niche, this looks like dashboards, this looks like automations, this looks like clear communication cadences and rhythms. This also looks like light systems that make the work more manageable. I'm not saying that you need to invest in Salesforce automatically. If you want to, completely fine. It's going to take a lot of headaches away. But what you do need is some semblance of centralization for all the work that you're doing. And then all the work that you've done so far in these steps. You need to make sure that everything's accessible. You need to make sure that your team's very clear that the expectation is to access it, to work from the SOPs, to refer back to the resources and workflows. Because if they're constantly coming back to you, then you're not really solving your problem. So this is a big step in empowerment as well for your current team to make sure that once we implement these systems, they're functional, people know how to use them, they're confident in using them, and you can start to take small steps backward and refocus as a leader in your own organization. And then we transition over to step 5, support and sustain. So our goal here is to keep these systems alive. They're going to be the heartbeat and the pulse of your organization. They should be. Too many practices do create a process once and then they let it die. They might have a mega rollout of a new project management system. And then they don't really get the response they thought they would. They get busy during their day. Maybe they're not logging in as often as they should. And then it dies out. They're left paying that annual subscription that nobody's using. Then we find ourselves right back where we started, unfortunately, and it's a very hard pill to swallow. So sustainability comes from regular review and accountability. So whether it's you in those initial phases, following up with your team, making sure that people are logged in, making sure that people are using those systems that you've created, accessing those SOPs, that handbook that you have available to them, the follow-up is needed and it's hugely important. Again, ties right back into empowering your team and making sure that they don't feel like they have to come directly to you to get an answer or a response or direction on things. We want to make sure that we're doing all we can to support accountability and sustainability. And so where does that leave us now? With delegation. As Josh mentioned earlier, I wrote a little bit of a book on it, and it's something that I find is the number one pain point with everyone I've worked with in this niche, with healthcare consultants, with practices. I think there's a very big misconception that delegation means I can't do it. I'm a loser. I thought I could do it. I should be able to do everything. It is my company. But it's really not about that. It's more about creating capacity. Maybe that's capacity in you first to say, this is all I can do in a day. And now I'm going to have to hand some things off to someone else. And that's okay. But it has to be done right. It has to be done with clarity, and it has to be done before things get way, way too off the rails. And we do help with that as well. A common mistake too is just making sure that we have the sustainable workflows behind being ready to delegate. So you wouldn't hand a pan that's on fire over to somebody else So set it out, okay? Too much of a risk. You're probably going to go through what you go through, whether you're getting the flour out of the pantry, whether you're getting your fire extinguisher from under the sink, and you're going to try and do it yourself, I would hope. But this is essentially the same thing that we're recommending. And then also making sure that any micromanaging or maybe attempts to directly guide step for step the person that you've handed the task off to are removed. If your impression is that you'll give it to somebody else to do, but you need to see every step through completion, maybe we're not ready just yet for delegation, and that's okay. We're going to get you there. But we understand that it builds trust, and that trust will build growth for your company. So we always make sure that that's in the background of the work that we're doing with our clients, is that it's always with the air to try and make trust another foundational component of your organization, part of your mission and your values. And it's very, very important, like we said, so you can see that successful, scalable growth that we all dream of having one. So from here, we're going to do a quick audit. And this quick audit is just a segue. We're not going to go too deep into the 10 questions today, but to let you guys know that there's just a very, very brief workflow that we use to identify the workflow gaps, bottlenecks, opportunities for burnout that exist. And this is always something that we do in our introductory calls. We also want to make sure that anywhere that you can identify for yourself that there's an issue, that we start there whenever we come in to assist you. Because if you have the awareness that it's a problem and you understand that it's something that's not sustainable, and you're already there when it comes to, the behavior change model, then we want to make that a priority with helping you. And so one of the things that we do, very important, and I would love to follow up with you guys in a brief email of those 10 questions that we use to spot those gaps and help throw up some flags to show, okay, we have a problem, let's do something about it. So Josh, I'll get with you on how to circulate that document out, and then we'll move on through our presentation. So just some key takeaways that we chatted about today. Most importantly is that your growth, your good, sustainable, successful level of growth is going to require structure. It's both internally, it's with your systems, it's with your company. It's when you approach people that you want to contribute to the growth of your company as well. Building these strong foundations are really the only way to ensure that the growth that you see lasts. Also, we talked about those 3 pillars: the people, the processes, and the protection. All keys for sustainable scaling, and making sure that we're identifying the 3 core components that are going to drive the success of our business long after we get done with implementing these systems and making sure that they're operating effectively. And then lastly, that scaling can happen without sacrifice. It seems like a lot. Starting a company is no easy feat and definitely shouldn't be seen as such. But there's absolutely a right way to do it with a solid and a healthy mindset that will get you into the pattern of creating repeatable systems that'll scale, that definitely preserve your mission, your culture, and the values that you want to see, not only within your organization, but in this space in general. And so with that, I'll take it to what we do specifically just a bit. My company, ProTask, we love doing this with businesses. We don't call them technically clients, we call them partners. We come alongside you with whatever stage that your business is in, whether you're just thinking about getting something off the ground, or you're really seeing those pain points of trying to take your team of 10 or 20 or 299 to 300. We support you in a very holistic approach, both with the infrastructure that we help you create, the leadership transition support, those team and staffing solutions. We can either hire direct for you, or we come alongside you and just support the team that you're trying to grow into more sustainable systems. And like I said, very adaptable at any stage of your company. This is something that is very important to us, aligning with mission-driven organizations that are truly looking to change and shape the way that business is done in this space. And so it's a little bit about us. And I'm going to put my contact information up here. I have a lovely QR code you can scan if you want a little bit more information. And I think these slides will be available to you after the presentation as well. But I will pause here and see if there's any other questions from our group today. Josh, I'll turn it over to you first.
Yeah, so that was that was great, and I liked how you mentioned that it's a partnership because we have the same similar mentality when it comes to like when we're working with cybersecurity, IT, compliance with our ABA partners, because there is no magic pill that you can take that's going to stabilize and scale your business.
Right.
Like an example on our end is, if we have a client that comes to us and says, hey, we need a firewall. Well, it's like, well, why do you need a firewall? Sometimes maybe they had a cousin that said they needed a firewall because it's going to keep them more secure, or maybe they read somewhere or something like that. But what in that situation, what that firewall becomes is this magical box that sits on the shelf that you don't really know what it does. You just have this idea that it's doing something for you. And maybe you need it, maybe you don't. I think that, as a business owner, you have to understand things in your business to some extent. Like, you don't need to know what level of encryption and all that kind of stuff and how the firewall actually works on the inside, but you at least need to understand what it does. And especially in ABA, we're working with tight budgets. So, we've seen quotes for firewalls and servers, thousands of dollars, and then, thousands of dollars to manage it. And then we go in and we do our assessment, and we're like, you don't need you don't need that. Like, you can get, as far as like a server, like you can get by with just your Microsoft SharePoint. Like, servers really only make sense for like large hospitals that need their data right now. If it's not urgent for you to get to your data, like if you can wait a little bit for it to download again, then you're fine with having things in the cloud. So there are things like that where we try to help ABA businesses not spend unnecessary money on things that they don't understand. And that's why they need to understand things to some extent, so that they're not paying for things they don't need. And then I also in our business, one of the reasons why we're able to spend so much time on ABA Impact while we're running an IT company, like the IT company takes about 10 to 20% of our time. And it's because we practice what we preach on our process of first eliminate anything that's not necessary, simplify what you have, and then automate what you can, like you said, like what's ethical to automate, and then delegate what's left over. And when you go through that process, like when you go through that audit that you're talking about, and you figure out how to fix things, what that looks like is like, when was the last time you took a vacation? Like, do you have to be at your business? Everybody's, coming to you for every single question, and you can't sleep at night because you're thinking about, what's going to happen tomorrow because you don't have the right structure or foundation in your business. And then even if vacation isn't your thing, like, well, what about scaling your business? Like, do you have the time and the resources to scale your business, or are you just like surviving and just being tied to your business every single day? Which kind of like leads to what you said about chaos to clarity framework, because there are a lot of ABA businesses that we talk to that they it's very common in ABA where you go to school, you get clinically trained, but they typically don't teach you the business side. And so that's one of the reasons why we even exist as ABA Impact as well, because you need the business skills. Otherwise, you're just scaling chaos. So you get out of school, go work for a couple of years for one of the big ABA businesses, and you might think, well, I can do that. And then you go out, but you still don't have the business skills. And it's not, and all these business skills, there are things that you could eat that the ABA, the BCBAs, RBTs, whoever's starting a business, like they can learn these things. They went to school and got a master's in behavioral science. Like, you can learn how to run a business. It's just, but you got to take the time to do it. And the longer you wait to audit and diagnose those issues in the business, the more expensive it's going to be to fix them, the more time consuming it is. So you mentioned earlier that, you have like the one person shops that are, that like, well, I don't really need to look into that yet because it's just me. That's the time to look into it is when, because now you only have one person to check, versus having 20 employees. Now you got to check out what everybody's doing. And now you've had people doing things a certain way for a certain amount of time. And now you're going to have to make them change how they're doing it versus figure it out when it's just you and maybe a couple of people, fix it then. And then now you're scaling a good model. And while you're small, document how you do everything. Like that's one of the biggest tips that we give people is like, document how you do everything, because then you can see what's wrong. Like if it's not written down and it's all in your head, like you can't really assess that. And then when it comes to like the AI automations, there's so much that you can do in Microsoft, in the Microsoft environment. We actually, there's a couple of people that in the group, one of them that I've talked to, his wife runs an ABA company, and they run it like all remote. Like it's kind of, but it's because of the way that they run it. Like they don't have to visit the office like 1 or 2 times a month. And it all just kind of runs itself. And they don't even have a practice management system. They build everything. They built their data collection, their scheduling, all in Microsoft.
That's incredible.
And so like, and especially with Copilot coming out now, like it's basically as powerful as ChatGPT. It runs off of the same models. The only difference with Copilot is that if you don't have to be as careful with PHI when it comes to Copilot, because as long as the compliance and security measures are in place on your Microsoft environment, which they should be, because at some point you're probably going to be emailing sensitive information or storing it in your SharePoint or OneDrive. So like you're going to have security to protect that PHI. But as long as that's set, whatever you're feeding to Copilot is also subject to those security and compliance standards. So rather than having to like, delete things out of your, or put placeholders in for like, names and things like that when you're putting into ChatGPT, you can just put the actual thing into Copilot as long as your security set up first. So like there's a lot of stuff that you can build in Microsoft for things that you're already paying for, where you don't have to go out and buy this like, crazy AI solution or all these different software to do these types of things. You can do that, but there's so many options now with the way things are set up now. And I can't remember exactly what you said that triggered me to think about this, but there's this common myth in ABA that like the high demand for services means that your business is doing good and your business is set up properly. It doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean it's good. It just really doesn't mean anything, because you could have your business could be horribly structured, but you still have a bunch of people coming in the door because there's such a high need. Like that's kind of like one of the biggest myths. Like one of the things that we experienced when we started building our community, we made about 30,000 phone calls back, last year to ABA business owners. We met with ABA business owners for a little over 1,200 hours of, just on a call, one-on-one call like this, where we're asking them like what business challenges you're experiencing, like because we wanted to learn, we genuinely wanted to learn. And then we went out and helped them find solutions for those things. And within a year of, we would meet with somebody, and then within a year of calling them back, about 20% of them had closed their business down. And it all comes back down to organizational strategy and in most cases cash flow issues. They didn't have the cash flow to keep going. And some of the problems were because Medicaid wasn't paying out on time, or the insurance companies weren't paying out on time, or whatever the case was. But it really came down to just not having a good plan in place when they started. Like I've talked to a lot of business owners, and one of the ones that stuck out to me was she was a BCBA for a company making like $150,000 a year. She saw the billing and she was like, well, I'm getting paid $55 an hour and the company's billing out $95 an hour. I want the whole 95 to myself. And so we're like, well,
right?
Yeah. Well, I'm like, well, let's do some math. Because there's a lot of things that like, like I said, you get out of school, you're a BCBA and maybe you go work for another company and you're like, I want to do it differently. Or you go straight out of school and like, I just want to go open up my own ABA service. Either way, you might look at that and be like, well, I can go do that. But like, there's a lot more involved in business ownership than what you kind of see from the outside. And so basically we did this like financial assessment with this BCBA, and it turns out in order to make the same amount of money that she's making as an employee for someone, she would have to manage about 15 people. And she was like, well, I don't want to manage 15 people. And it's like, well, then, but that's what it's going to take.
Right.
So when we showed her the math, she was like, well, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And we consider that a win, because what we don't want to happen is what we have seen happen when we're calling people back and they shut down within a year. It's like, you start a business and you don't really know all the details, and then you get into it and you realize like, I can't survive. But in that time, you've taken on all these clients, kids that need therapy, and then you shut down, and now the kids are back out on wait lists trying to find therapy again. So like, what our main goal, the reason why we do these live streams, the reason why ABA Impact exists, and the reason why people should work with you is because the world needs more ABA services, not less. The autism rate is growing like this, and the people that can provide services is growing like this. And so in order to close that gap, the existing business owners and the ones that are starting right now, if they build the right foundation and build their systems in a scalable way, then they can grow to meet those needs. So
absolutely. And I think that's where you and I both connected on the call we had weeks ago, because we are both not selling a product, like a business in a box that's going to give people success. All we're doing is reframing their internal capacity and the tools that they have inside of them, pulling those out and letting them see the success that they have, that they're completely capable of reaching intrinsically. And so I appreciate you bringing me on today. Thank you for letting me say everything I needed to say today, because I agree, this space needs to grow, the services, the capacity, the reach, it needs to flourish. And I think for anybody that's interested in going out on their own or growing their company, growing their business and their reach, you have what it takes within you. It just takes a little bit of intention and integrity to get there. And so that's what we're all about, is supporting those that are willing to put in the time and effort. And I know that that's the same model that you guys operate from as well.
Well, this was awesome, and I can't wait to do it again. So thanks again for coming on. And if you're watching this live or you're watching the recording, book some time with Gabrielle. She's very aligned with everything that we're doing at ABA Impact, and I'm looking forward to continuing the collaboration.
You're already doing the work, investing your time, your energy, and your vision. So let's make it count. Build something that works without breaking you. The EBCBA Blueprint is the way. Get started for free with our foundation course.